August 17, 1887 marks the birth of Jamaica's first national hero, Mosiah Garvey, into poverty-stricken circumstances. To understand the kind of poverty Garvey was brought into, which was quite common for the slave descendants in those times, we revisit his childhood. Garvey was born into a family of 13. His parents and 10 other siblings, 9 of which died in infancy. There were very little access to public health services and education. No running water, electricity, radio, nor television, and no food security. Marcus Garvey was malnourished in his childhood and was susceptible to a myriad of diseases at the time. He dropped out of school at the age of 11 to assist his family with income. At age 15, he was the sole breadwinner of the house as his father abandoned his duties. Marcus had to then support his mother and sister for the next 3 years. Fast forward to his adulthood when he returned to Jamaica from the US on December 10, 1927, after he and other Black Star Line officials were found guilty of mail fraud. Upon arrival, he re-established the local chapter of the UNIA and went on to establish Jamaica's first political party, the People's Political Party, on September 9, 1929. His 14-point plan manifesto included minimum wage, land reform, and the establishment of a Jamaican university and polytechnic. Garvey was poised with his experience from overseas. He had learned from his mistakes with the UNIA and was ready to deliver prosperity to his people. 2 months later, he announced himself as a candidate for a seat in the 1929 by-election in the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation. However, before the election was held, he was arrested for 3 months for demeaning the judiciary and undermining public confidence in them. What this meant was that Garvey was speaking out against the horrible mistreatment of the slave descendants and called on the mixed-race upper middle class to hold the legislators to account. And of course, the aristocrats didn't like this. Garvey spent some years in the US, where the treatment of black people was horrible. In Garvey's eyes, what he saw in the US was at the peak of the Jim Crow era, where blacks couldn't even drink from the same fountain as whites, and still, it was nowhere near as bad as what the people of Jamaica was experiencing. This showed just how poorly the people in Jamaica were living under the colonial rule. While in prison, Marcus Garvey won the by-election, much to the chagrin of the colonial elitists. But Garvey failed to obtain a leave of absence from his political duties, and thus the seat was declared vacant. Though despaired by this technicality, he went back for the 1930 Legislative Council election, but lost against the white elitist George Seymour. He initially thought the loss was due to his supporters taking bribes to vote for his opponent, but it turned out a majority of his supporters were among the peasantry and was not able to vote. Despite the setback, Garvey went on to establish the Jamaica Workers and Laborers Association in April 1930. He attempted to revitalize his presence in the public sphere, but his efforts proved futile, as his spirit was broken from the hardship, strife, and disappointment. He returned to London in 1935 and later died of a stroke on June 10, 1940. What Marcus Garvey did was unprecedented and paved the way for other nationalists to champion the road to self-governance for Jamaica.